A warm welcome back into the course Thermodynamics. Today we are going to begin with lecture 4 from the course, but make sure you watch the previous ones before viewing this one. In the last lecture we talked about the state of a system. So what is the state of a system? Well, it is going to be the condition in which the system is going to be in. And the condition or the state of a system we can tell by describing a few of its measurable properties. And these measurable properties we call them as state variables, like we have pressure, volume, temperature, which can tell about the state of a system. One of the examples that we took was that we had a glass of water. The glass of water, this was at a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. We had another glass of water that was at a temperature of 90 degrees Celsius. So both of them, they were in a different state because the temperature that was different. Now another definition that we learned about the state variables in the last lecture was that if one of these measurable properties that changes, well, the state of the system also changes. So for example, again, we have that glass of water at 10 degrees Celsius. We heat it up to a temperature of 90 degrees Celsius. So change in temperature has happened. Temperature is that measurable property which we can use to describe the state of a system. If that has changed, that means the state of the system has also changed. And you also know that first of all at 10 degrees Celsius we had cold water, and now at 90 it is going to be hot water. So you understand that changing the temperature is going to change the state of the system. Now the next question is, what caused that change of temperature? What did that cause? Well, it was heating. Obviously, you know, when we are going to heat water, it is going to be changing the temperature from a lower temperature to a higher temperature. So what is now this heating? Well, this heating is what we call as a thermodynamic process. So in this lecture, we are going to talk about what do we mean by a thermodynamic process, and then we will be learning about the various types of thermodynamic processes. So I hope you are going to enjoy your learning with me. I am Dr. Ritu Johar, your educator from the channel H2O, the A to Z of chemistry. So let us begin the learning today. So let us first of all start with the definition. What do we mean by a thermodynamic process? It is going to be that process which is going to bring about the change in the state of the system. And we have different types of thermodynamic processes, and the types we are going to classify under two headings. First is going to be according to the state of the system and its interaction with the surroundings. And here the processes, they are going to be of four types. That is the isothermal process, the isobaric process, isochoric process, and adiabatic process. In all these processes, very interestingly, what you will be finding is that one of the thermodynamic properties is going to be constant. For example, in the isothermal process, it is going to be the temperature that is going to be constant. And then the other type of classification is going to be according to the path of the final state attained. And here the process, this can be of two types: reversible process and irreversible process. In fact, all the four processes that we have written above, we will be studying them under the heading of these two processes. Meaning, we will be studying about the reversible isothermal process and the irreversible isothermal process, then the reversible isobaric process and the irreversible isobaric process, and so on. So all these processes, they are going to be important. They are what we have to study in detail in the thermodynamic study, and we will be taking up them one by one. But here we are just having a brief introduction about them. So first of all, we will be discussing what do we mean by an isothermal process. So what would it mean by isothermal process? Iso means same, and thermal is related to heat, and heat is related to temperature. So we can say it is going to be a same temperature process. It is going to be that process in which the temperature of the system remains constant throughout various operations. So what this means is that supposedly if we are starting up a process at a temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, throughout the whole process the temperature should remain 50 degrees Celsius. And here very importantly, what you have to remember is that we are starting a process at 50 degrees Celsius. The temperature rises to 70 degrees Celsius. By the end, the final state, again the temperature becomes 50 degrees Celsius. Is this process an isothermal process? No, this is not an isothermal process because the temperature was not maintained at the same 50 degrees Celsius. There was a fluctuation in the temperature, rising and falling. What we want is that the temperature of the system, this should remain constant throughout the process. So if it is 50, it has to remain 50 throughout the process, right? Now, where did you study about an isothermal process earlier? Well, you studied it while we were talking about the lectures on states of matter, when we were talking about the Boyle's law. And in Boyle's law, what you have studied is that for an ideal gas, for a fixed amount of gas, the pressure of the gas is inversely proportional to volume at a constant temperature. So that process would be called as what? It would be called as an isothermal process. So if we have a container fitted with a piston, well, and this we have taken some gas and we have taken a gas, so it is going to be a fixed composition now of that gas. The temperature, if we maintain it at some constant value, then if we are, this gas is having occupying some V volume and it is exerting a pressure P, well, when you're going to exert some force on the piston comes down. So this means that the volume is going to decrease. And when volume decreases, what will happen to the pressure? The pressure will be increasing. So this is what you have studied in Boyle's law, and such a process you will be calling it as an isothermal process. And also what you have learned about the graph of this law. So that is the reverse hyperbola graph that we draw for the Boyle's law. Pressure is inversely proportional to volume. And all of this we are going to study in detail in the lectures on thermodynamics, because we are going to talk about an ideal gas system a lot in the study. Fine. Now, there can be other examples of an isothermal process also. Supposedly, there is an exothermic reaction happening. All right. In an exothermic reaction, what we want is, well, the temperature should remain constant for the system. And for that, what will be happening? Well, heat can flow from the system to the surrounding, and then the temperature can be maintained. So what type of walls of the system would be required for that? Well, they should be conducting walls. Generally, what you will be seeing is that when we will be studying the thermodynamic processes, either we will be talking about closed systems or we will be talking about isolated system. So out of the two, which one would be used for an isothermal process? Well, it is going to be a closed system, because it is going to be a closed system which can exchange heat with the surroundings, but it cannot exchange matter, right? Whereas an isolated system, it will not be able to exchange heat as well. So heat, if it has to flow from the system to the surroundings to maintain a constant temperature, we will be taking a closed system, right? I hope this is clear. And if it is going to be the converse, that we have an endothermic reaction and we want the system's temperature to be maintained, well, then the heat has to flow from the surroundings to the system, right? Again, what you will be requiring is a closed system, not an isolated system, because in a closed system we can have conducting boundaries. Okay. So here what you have to remember is, in an isothermal process, there should be no net change in temperature. dt is 0, or you can also say delta T is 0, right? There should not be a slight amount of change in temperature. Perfectly clear? Great. So next we have is the isobaric process. So again, iso is going to stand for same, and baric, this is coming from the Greek word baros, which means pressure. So this would be again meaning same pressure process. And if I hope you all remember the pressure, this has one of its units to be bar. So from there also you can remember bar is going to be related to pressure. So same pressure process. This is going to be that process in which no pressure change occurs between the system and the surrounding during any step of the process. Therefore, dP will be equal to 0. And here a very common everyday life example that we can take is that of boiling water. So for example, if we take 1 mole of water at 298 Kelvin, that is going to be just room temperature water, 25 degrees Celsius, at 1 atmospheric pressure, well, it will get converted into vapor at 373 Kelvin, that is 100 degrees Celsius, at 1 atmospheric pressure. So if you take a pan full of water, right? So the pressure that will be exerted on it, because it is an open vessel, that will be the pressure exerted by the atmosphere, and the atmospheric pressure, this is 1 atmospheric pressure, right? So if you supposedly have this water at 25 degrees Celsius, you start heating it, it will keep on increasing the temperature of the water up till 100 degrees Celsius, when the water will start boiling. And again, the pressure is going to remain the same. That will be 1 atmospheric pressure, the pressure which is being exerted by the atmosphere on water. So throughout the whole process, what is being constant? That is pressure. So isobaric, therefore pressure. And again, one more example that we can take for a gas, because we are going to study a lot of gases in the thermodynamic processes. So here when we take a gas, supposedly this is a vessel which is fitted with a piston, and in this you have taken n moles of gas at a pressure P, a volume V it is occupying, and a temperature T. Okay, now the pressure of this gas is being exerted towards the outside, and the atmospheric pressure is exerting a pressure on the piston in the opposite direction, and therefore the piston is going to be fixed at one position. Okay, and it will be at this position till the pressure inside is equal to the atmospheric pressure. Now what we do is we again start heating this vessel so that the temperature of the gas starts increasing. Temperature increases, kinetic energy increases, force exerted by the walls, the molecules on the walls of the container, that will be increasing. Hence the pressure exerted by the gas will increase. So if the pressure inside increases, well, it is going to be more than the pressure outside. So what will happen is it is going to push the piston upwards. When it is going to push the piston upwards, what will happen? It will be the volume that will be increasing, and it will again keep on increasing till the pressure inside becomes pressure outside. So again, the pressure is constant. What has increased with the increase in temperature is the volume. Right? So that means that temperature is directly proportional to volume at constant pressure for a fixed amount of gas. And if you remember what law it is, well, this is the Charles law, right? So the Charles law says that at a constant pressure for a fixed amount of gas, the volume of a gas is going to be directly proportional to its temperature. That also in the kelvins. I hope you all remember that. It is all throughout a revision of the course of states of matter along with the study of thermodynamics. So if I draw the graph for it, well, this is the volume, this is the pressure. So volume is increasing, but the pressure is going to be constant for a isobaric process. And for a isothermal, what you have just now studied is it is going to be a reverse hyperbola. Pressure is going to be inversely proportional to volume. So here again in the isobaric process, what can change is that the volume can change, but the pressure is going to remain constant. So I hope this will be also now clear to you. What do you mean by an isobaric process? The details will be coming up in the upcoming lectures. So next we have is the isochoric process, and in an isochoric process, now what is going to be constant? Temperature is done, pressure is done, so what is left is volume. So same volume process is going to be isochoric process. So no change in volume is going to occur between the system and the surrounding during every step of the process. We will be calling such a process to be isochoric. dV is going to be equal to 0, right? And in this process, again, a pressure change can be taking place. What we require is the volume to be constant. And if we take an example of that, again, we now take a closed system. And here now what we want is the volume to be constant. So volume will not change. In this, now if we have taken a gas which is having n moles, pressure is P and temperature is T. Now supposedly if I increase the temperature, the volume cannot change. So what will be increasing is only pressure, right? So temperature increases, pressure is going to increase. When we have a constant volume for a fixed amount of gas, that is called as the Gay-Lussac law. So I hope you all remember this. And now if you draw the graph for it, what is it going to be? Well, now it is the pressure which is increasing, the volume remains constant. So this is going to be isochoric. When it was same pressure, it was isobaric. And when the pressure was inversely proportional to volume, this is what the graph we had. So these are the three graphs that we have studied till now. And now if we talk about a chemical reaction taking place in which we have, for example, the reaction of hydrogen and chlorine, okay, to produce 2HCl. So what you can see is hydrogen is a gas, chlorine is a gas, and HCl is also a gas. We had before the reaction 2 moles of gases, and after the reaction also 2 moles of gases. So the number of molecules, there has been no change. When it has been no change in the number of molecules of a gas, well, the volume occupied by the gas is also going to be the same. So here what we will be having is that in a reaction where no change is occurring in case of the number of the gaseous molecules, such a process will be having no change in volume as well as pressure, because generally whenever we are going to make a reaction happen, we will be doing it at some constant pressure. Okay, so such a process we will be calling it as a isobaric and isochoric process. Okay, so next we move on to the study of the fourth process, that is the adiabatic process. Now, when I say the adiabatic process, I hope you all remember that you have already used the word adiabatic in our learning in lecture number 1 when we talked about the adiabatic wall. So, adiabatic wall is what wall? Through which neither matter nor energy can be exchanged between the system and the surrounding. Right, and such a system we call this as an isolated system, because no matter, no energy can be exchanged. It is completely isolated. Okay, now the example that we generally take for an adiabatic system or an isolated system, in fact, it was going to be, well, which one? It is going to be a thermos flask. So in a thermos flask, when you're going to put some hot coffee, well, the hot coffee remains hot. Why does it remain hot? Because the temperature inside is going to be greater, right? The temperature of the system is greater than the temperature of the surrounding, but the heat cannot flow from the system to the surrounding. Similarly, instead of the hot coffee, if I put some cold coffee inside, well, now the system of, the temperature of the surrounding is going to be greater than that of the system, but now also from the surrounding, the system cannot attain some heat. Right, so heat transfer is not possible. Therefore, hot coffee is going to remain hot and cold coffee is going to remain cold. So what is remaining constant in an adiabatic process? Is it temperature, pressure, or volume? Well, it is going to be heat, that is not changing. Whatever is the heat of the system, that remains constant. Right, so no heat is going to change between the system and the surrounding during any step of the process. Therefore, dq is going to be equal to 0, and q here refers to heat. So whenever in the study of thermodynamics we are going to refer to heat, we will be referring it to with the letter q. All right. So now the system is going to remain completely insulated from the surroundings as far as an adiabatic process is concerned. And in such a process, now if an exothermic reaction is going to take place, what will happen to the heat that is going to be evolved? Well, it will remain with the system. And when it is going to remain with the system, this means that the temperature of the system is going to rise. Right, this is the difference between the adiabatic and the isothermal process. In the isothermal process, the heat evolved, it was dissipated to the surroundings, right, so that the temperature of the system remained constant. Here the temperature is going to rise because the heat is going to remain with the system. And what will happen in the endothermic process? Well, there can be no heat which can come from the surroundings into the system. So if there has to be a reaction taking place inside an isolated system, well, what will happen is that there is going to be some energy present in the reactants. The system, it has some internal energy. You will be studying about what is internal energy in the upcoming lectures. So the internal energy of the system is going to supply the heat for that reaction to happen or the endothermic process to happen. Okay, so what will happen is, therefore, the temperature of the system, this will fall. Okay, so in an adiabatic process, in case of an exothermic process, temperature will rise. In case of an endothermic process, the temperature is going to fall, right? Because the system's energy has to, the heat has to be remaining constant. And one more thing that you have to remember for an adiabatic process is that we cannot always have a perfectly adiabatic change.
Why we cannot have a perfect adiabatic chain? Because it is impossible to completely isolate the system or insulate the system. There is always be going to some energy loss that is going to take place. I hope you all remember when I told you about an isolated system, I told you that if you want to have a perfectly isolated system, it can be only the universe itself. There is going to be no other isolated system. And when we are going to draw the graph for now an adiabatic process, you will not be able to understand that completely as yet, because there are a lot many things that we have to discuss. But this is the graph we had for the isochoric process. The volume is constant. Isobaric, when the pressure is constant. The isothermal process, when pressure is inversely proportional to volume. The adiabatic process is also going to be quite similar to that of the isothermal process, except that the slope is going to be more steep in case of the adiabatic process. It is going to be inversely proportional to volume, but not in accordance with the Boyle's law. There will be some change that you will be learning later on. Alright, so this is what we have for the 4 plots that we will be having for the 4 different types of processes, as we will be discussing them later on. Now, after these 4 processes, there is one more process that you learned about in the last lecture also, and that is called as the cyclic process. So I hope you all remember that cyclic process is going to be that process in which the system, after completing a series of changes, returns back to its original state. And for example, we have a diagrammatic representation that if the initial stage is state 1, then the process goes to a state 2, then to 3, and then to 4, and then finally it returns back to 1. And in such a process, what is going to happen to the various state properties? Well, for all the state properties, delta x is going to be summation of the delta x throughout the whole process is going to be equal to 0. So what this means is that supposedly, if I have a start of the process, the temperature at 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, so here this means that the temperature is remaining constant for the process x1 to 2. Okay, so we reach a final state, but here the temperature has not changed. The pressure may be changing, the volume may be changing, but the temperature is not constant if this is going to be a plot for temperature. Okay, so here the temperature is remaining constant. Then what we see is that the temperature drops. So here it is 50 degrees Celsius. So delta x is going to be, delta T will be equal to 0 degrees Celsius, right? Then from here there is a drop supposedly to a temperature of 40 degrees Celsius. So it is going to be minus 10 degrees Celsius. The temperature has decreased, and then again from 3 to 4 the difference is 0, because again the temperature remains 40 degrees Celsius, and then from 4 to 1 again the temperature rises and it becomes 50 degrees Celsius, because after a series of changes it has to return back to the original state, and the original state was a temperature of 50 degrees Celsius. So here now this is a rise of 10 degrees Celsius, and if you add all of this, 0 minus 10 plus 0 plus 10, the summation of all this is going to be equal to 0 degrees Celsius. So there has been no change in the property if you add up all the differences of the temperatures that took place. Okay, so this you have to remember is that the summation of delta x, this will always come up to 0 in a cyclic process, or you can say the differentiation, the integration of dx is going to be equal to 0. The sum of the differential of the state function over a cyclic process is always going to be equal to 0. Okay, so this is as far as the processes are concerned. If we consider about the state of the system or the interaction between the system and the surrounding, but there is one more classification for the processes. So let us continue a bit more further. So the next way in which we classify the various processes according to the path of the final state attained, right? And according to this, the processes, they can be of 2 types. One is reversible and the other is irreversible process. But before we talk about these two, there are a few more terms which I want you to clearly understand. First of all, what do we mean by the path of a process? So whatever sequence is of the steps starting from the initial state to the final state of the system, we will be calling it as the path of the process. So if you remember in the last lecture, while we were talking about the state function and the path function, what we said was that you started from home, then you went to your friend's place, then you went to your school, right? So this is a path of a process, right? So starting from home, whatever you did, you've reached your friend's place, then you reach your school. So whatever steps were there from reaching from home to school, that you will be calling as the path of your journey, right? Similarly, how you went from your home to school, whether you went by walking or you by cycling or by a scooter or a car, so all this way that you are using to attain the final state, that we call as the path of the process. And now for reaching the final state from the initial state, there are many possible ways, there are many possible paths, but whichever path we are going to choose to attain the final state from the initial state of the system, we will be calling it as a process. So there are going to be many paths for a process, but the one which you choose, that will be called as a process only. Okay. And then the path of a cyclic process, you just simply call it as a cycle. So now with these words in mind, let us discuss the reversible process and the irreversible process. So the next, now let us discuss what do we mean by the reversible and the irreversible processes. And here I would first of all like you to keep your pen down. Do not write anything. Just understand the concept very well, because this is what is going to be required throughout the whole understanding of thermodynamics. If you does not understand this, you will not understand the whole chapter of thermodynamics. Okay, so very importantly, pay very attention in understanding these two processes. What do we mean by reversible and what do we mean by an irreversible process? So here now in front of you is a diagram, and in this diagram what do we have is a container. This container, this is fitted with a piston, and this piston, this is a very massless piston. It does not have any weight of its own, and it is very frictionless also, so no force is required to just move it up and down. It can move very easily up and down. Now in this container we have taken some gas. So if it is some gas, obviously it has some moles of gas, and it is going to be applying some pressure also, because you know from your knowledge of states of matter that the gas molecules, they exert a force on the walls of the container, and that force per unit area we call as pressure. So this pressure which is being exerted by the gas is on the walls of the container. It is going to be on the wall of the piston as well. Okay, and when this gas is going to exert pressure on the piston, well, the piston is going to move upwards. But now what we have done is, on this piston, on the outward side, what we have placed is some sand. Okay, and this sand plus the pressure of the atmosphere is what is now on the outside of the piston. So there is some pressure which is being exerted from the outside, and some pressure being exerted from the inside. Okay, now the pressure which is being exerted from the inside, that is the pressure exerted by the gas, this is going to be called as the driving force. You can call this pressure of the gas to be a force also, because this is a force that is being applied on the piston, right? So we call the force which is being applied by the gas to be the driving force, right? And this driving force per unit area will be equal to the pressure of the gas. Okay, and this is going to make the piston move up. But now opposing this driving force is another force, which is the pressure being exerted by the atmosphere plus the pressure which is being exerted by this mass of sand that is on the top, right? So this, we call this as the opposing force. What do we call this? We call this as the opposing force, and this opposing force per unit area, you can call this as pressure external. External pressure which is on the piston, and this is going to push the piston downwards, right? Now, if the piston is not moving, this means what? It means that the pressure which is being exerted by the gas and which is the pressure which is exerting by the atmosphere and the sand, this is equal, right? So here P gas is equal to P external. That is why the piston is not moving. Now this is the initial setup. Okay. From this initial setup, what we want to do is that we want to take this piston to the top of the container. We want this to move here. Okay. So for moving to the top of the container, what are the two? There are two possibilities. One possibility is that we remove this sand very quickly. It will quickly jump up to the top, okay, because all of a sudden the sand will be removed. And the other is that we remove the sand very, very slowly. Okay, so the first case what we are doing is that we are removing all the sand very quickly. When we remove all the sand very quickly, that would mean is that the pressure external is going to be far more less than the pressure exerted by the gas. So supposedly initially the pressure which was exerted by the gas and outside, because they were both equal, this was 50 units. Okay. Now what happens is that we have all of a sudden removed the sand. So what is left is the pressure of the atmosphere, and the pressure of the atmosphere is just 1 atmosphere, right? So this means that the external pressure, this is far more less than the pressure exerted by the gas. Therefore, the driving force is much more than the opposing force, right? As if it is like that there is a tug of war going on between you and your friends, and on one side you are 10 people and on the other side it is just one person. So obviously you will be very easily able to pull the rope towards yourself. So it is just like this. So the external pressure is far less than the pressure of the gas, and therefore what will happen is the piston will quickly move onto the top. So this is one way in which we can complete this process. Okay, and what is the other way in which we can complete this process? Well, the other way in which we can complete this process is that we slowly start removing the sand particles, right? So one by one we start removing these sand particles from here. So when we do that, so initial setup was that the pressure of the gas was equal to the external pressure. Now what you have done is you have removed slight amount of sand. So slight amount of sand means a very slight amount of pressure it was exerting. So if it was 50 atmosphere pressure over here and outside it was also 50, by the removal of sand it becomes probably just 49.9 atmosphere. So just hardly any amount of pressure that has been removed. Okay, and in correspondence to that, what will happen is that the pressure inside is greater than the pressure outside. So now also this piston is going to move slightly up. Okay, but now it is not going to move up till the top because the pressure difference is not much. So it moves slightly upwards. Okay, so just to understand it, this is what it was. So you can say that initial state was this line and now it has moved slightly upwards. Okay, so now what has happened? It has moved slightly upwards. Okay, then next when it is going to be balanced, it will move up till now when the pressure inside and the outside becomes equal. So here also it will be 49.9 and this will be also 49.9. The next you remove some more particles of sand. So supposedly now it becomes 49 outside, and then again the piston will move slightly up again until the pressure inside becomes also 49. Okay, so slow and steadily you are increasing the height of the piston. Now in this process, very interestingly, what can happen is that if you put a slight amount of sand back, well, the piston will come down also, right? So if I put back slight amount of sand, supposedly this pressure was 49, now again this becomes 49.9 and the piston will go down up till again the pressure inside also becomes the same, right? So it will compress down. So this means first of all that I am raising the piston up in small little steps, and also because I am doing it very slowly, I can revert back my steps also, right? Because slow and steadily, here it was so fast that immediately it was like a spring that it just moved up. There was no point for me to think what will happen. okay, and it has just moved up and I could not control that process. But now this process is under my control. I am moving slow and steadily each step, balancing the temperature of the gas, pressure of the gas, sorry, with the pressure outside, and now I can even reverse back my process. So such a process which is under my control, such a process which is going on very slowly, such a process which is going on in so many steps, we call that to be a reversible process. And the other process which was very fast, it was so quick from the initial to the final state that I could not reverse back the process. It was happening in just one go. Well, that process we call it as an irreversible process. Okay, so I hope now you have an understanding of the concept, and if you have the understanding of the concept, well, we are going to write down certain things and make our concept perfectly well, so that in the next upcoming lectures you do not have any difficulty in understanding what all we will be discussing, because this is what we are going to build up our lectures on: the study of the movement of this piston in a reversible process and in an irreversible process. So this is reversible and this is irreversible. Okay, so let us see now the definitions and the written stuff for this. So now you can write out everything. First of all, defining reversible process: if the process is carried out infinitesimally slowly so that the driving force is infinitesimally greater than the opposing force, we call that process to be a reversible process. So the process is going to be carried out very, very, very slowly, so that the driving force, which is the force exerted by the gas on the wall of the piston, this is going to be infinitesimally greater than the opposing force. Which is the opposing force? The force which is exerted by the atmosphere as well as the pile of the sand which we have placed on this piston. Right? So we want this driving force to be just slightly more than the opposing force. So the difference between the two forces, you can say this is equal to dF, and if dF this approaches 0, it is very, very small, then we will be calling this process to be a reversible process. Right? So at the initial setup, what did we have? We had the driving force per unit area to be the pressure of the gas, the external opposing force, that is the atmospheric force, and the force which is exerted by the stand per unit area, that we will be calling P external. Now the piston is not moving. This means that the pressure of the gas will be equal to the external pressure. Then what did we do? We removed a small bit of sand. So what will happen is that the external pressure will decrease by a very small amount. So this becomes P external minus dP now. Right? So P gas will be greater than P external minus dP. So this is going to push the piston upwards by a very, very small amount. Okay, and this will keep it on pushing till again the pressure of the gas becomes equal to P external minus dP. So we will be having again an equilibrium attained. The pressure inside will be equal to pressure outside. So this is called as a mechanical equilibrium. A mechanical equilibrium is one in which the pressure is going to be equal. All right. So now we will be having a series of these equilibrium steps in a reversible process, each of which is going to be an equilibrium state. It is going to be a mechanical equilibrium that we have attained in this case. Right? So I hope this is clear. So now what we will be having is that at every equilibrium step, the piston to be in equilibrium, we will be having P gas to be equal to P atmosphere plus mg upon A. Right? And this mg upon A is going to be the pressure which is going to be exerted by this pile of sand. Right? So the mass of the sand into G divided by A will be giving us the pressure which is exerted by the sand plus the pressure of the atmosphere. This is going to be the total pressure, which is the external pressure every time. Right? So what all changes that we are making, every time the external pressure will be equal to this amount, and this has to be equal to P gas for the piston to be in equilibrium so that it is not moving. So enough time is going to be allowed between each change for the properties to come to a constant value. So we will be first of all decreasing the amount of sand. We will wait till it becomes stable. Then again we will remove some amount of sand. Again we will allow the piston to become stable, so that every time we have an equilibrium state that is attained. So an ideal reversible process therefore take an infinite time for completion. So it is going to be a very long time for an ideal reversible process to be complete. Such processes, they are going to be just ideal only. They cannot be realized in practice. So we call generally a reversible process in daily life to be a quasi-static process. Now, what is a quasi-static process? It is going to be a process in which the system remains infinitesimally closer to the state of equilibrium throughout the process. It will not be every time that equilibrium is attained, but it is going to be quite close to that equilibrium. So we can say now a reversible process is going to be that process which can be reversed at any stage by increasing the opposing force by an infinitesimal amount. So we can go one step back by putting some more sand, right? So this process is called as a reversible process because we can reverse it at any state. Okay, so I hope now the reversible process is clear to you. So let us look at now again the irreversible process. So now on the opposite side, if we have a process which is not carried out infinitesimally slowly so that the system does not get any chance to attain equilibrium, that process we will be calling it as an irreversible process. So here we had just removed the sand, all of it together in one go. So what happened was that the pressure outside decreased far less than the pressure inside the cylinder, and therefore the piston, to maintain that equilibrium, just quickly went to the top, right? So the system never got any chance in between the initial state and the final state to attain equilibrium. So the system attains equilibrium only at the initial and the final states of the process, never anywhere in between. So equilibrium states, therefore, they are going to be finite in number. This can be counted. For example, the initial state and the final state. So it is going to be only two states of equilibrium where the pressure of the gas is going to be the pressure equal to the pressure outside. Fine. So there is going to be a finite difference between the driving force and the opposing force. So it is not going to be just approximately zero. There is going to be some appreciable amount of difference between the driving and the opposing force, so that the process occurs at a finite rate and in a finite time. It is going to occur also very quickly, and it is also going to occur in a very short time also, whereas the reversible process, it was occurring very slowly and it was occurring in an infinite time actually, right? So an intermediate state of the process, different state functions like pressure, temperature, they cannot be defined. So we cannot tell that in between the initial and the final state, what is going to be the pressure, what is going to be the temperature, because everything is changing on so very quickly. All real processes are going to be actually irreversible processes. The ones which we will be calling them reversible, they are not going to be actual in the true sense. They will not be reversible because we will never be having such a process which we can make it happen so very slowly. All right. So this cannot be reversed without the help of an external agency and without changing the properties of the surroundings. So this is going to be an irreversible process. We cannot change it that very easily as we could do the reversible process. So now let us quickly tabulate these differences so that if in a subjective examination you have to write down the differences, you can do that very quickly. And while you're revising your concepts for your even competitive examination, this is going to be the thing that is going to be very helpful to you people. So the reversible process is going to be that process which occurs at a very low pace. It is going to occur very slowly, and it involves a series of equilibrium states. right? Every step is going to be an equilibrium state. The irreversible process, this occurs rapidly without any series of equilibrium states. The reversible process, the opposing and the driving forces, they are nearly equal, just like a tug of war in which both sides there will be 10 people, almost equal power, only that one side is going to be having slightly more power than the other side so that it can pull the rope towards the side, right? So the driving force and the opposing force, they are nearly equal in the reversible process, whereas in the irreversible process they are going to vary very widely. So it is going to be just like a tug of war with for 10 people on one side and one person on the other side. Work obtainable is going to be maximum in the reversible process. Okay, so this is something I would like to elaborate more when we are going to take up further lectures so that the concept becomes clear. That is why it is just an introductory lecture. We have to talk a lot about these reversible and the irreversible processes. I have not touched upon this point till now. I will be doing it in the upcoming lectures, but this is something that you have to remember very importantly. And in irreversible process, the work obtained is going to be always less than that of a reversible process. The reversible process cannot be realized in actual practice, or it is a theoretical concept, whereas irreversible, this is going to be practically conceivable. Reversible, it is a multi-step process. It takes infinite time for the completion. The irreversible one, it does not have many steps and it is going to get completed in a short time. The reversible one, this occurs in a direct, the changes which are happening, this can be reversed in the reverse process. Just go one step back and you can reverse it very easily, whereas in the irreversible there are no steps, so you cannot reverse the process as well, right? So I hope now this concept is very clear to you people. Great. So सबसे पहले शुरू करते हैं थर्मोडायनेमिक प्रोसेस की डेफिनेशन से, सो दैट कि आप इसको लिख सकें. तो द प्रोसेस दिस ब्रिंग्स about the change in the state of the system is known as a thermodynamic process. कोई भी प्रोसेस जो किसी भी सिस्टम की स्टेट में चेंज लेके आएगा वो हो गया थर्मोडायनेमिक प्रोसेस. और हमारे पास डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ थर्मोडायनेमिक प्रोसेसेस हैं, और ये जो थर्मोडायनेमिक प्रोसेसेस हैं इनकी क्लासिफिकेशन हम दो तरह से करेंगे. पहली क्लासिफिकेशन करेंगे अकॉर्डिंग टू द स्टेट ऑफ द सिस्टम एंड इट्स इंटरैक्शन विद द सराउंडिंग्स, और इसके अकॉर्डिंगली प्रोसेस चार तरह के हैं: आइसोथर्मल प्रोसेस, आइसोबारिक प्रोसेस, आइसोकोरिक प्रोसेस एंड एडियाबेटिक प्रोसेस. और इन सब में जो इम्पोर्टेंट चीज आप देखोगे वो ये है कि कोई एक थर्मोडायनेमिक प्रॉपर्टी यहाँ पे कांस्टेंट होगी, जैसे कि आइसोथर्मल में टेम्परेचर कांस्टेंट होगा. और इन सब प्रोसेसेस को आज हम बहुत छोटा ब्रीफ में अंडरस्टैंड करेंगे, और फिर उसके बाद अपकमिंग लेक्चर्स में हम इनको वन बाय वन डिटेल में डिस्कस करते जाएंगे. और नेक्स्ट वे ऑफ क्लासिफिकेशन है अकॉर्डिंग टू द पाथ ऑफ द फाइनल स्टेट अटेन्ड, और इसके अकॉर्डिंगली द प्रोसेस इज गोइंग टू बी रिवर्सिबल प्रोसेस एंड इरिवर्सिबल प्रोसेस. इनफैक्ट ये जो चारों ऊपर हमने प्रोसेसेस को पढ़ना है, इन सब चारों प्रोसेसेस को हम ये रिवर्सिबल और इरिवर्सिबल प्रोसेसेस के हेडिंग्स के अंडर स्टडी करेंगे. मीनिंग reversible isothermal process, irreversible isothermal process, reversible isobaric process, irreversible isobaric process, etc. तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं सबसे पहले अंडरस्टैंड करने से कि हमें आइसोथर्मल प्रोसेस से क्या मीनिंग मालूम पड़ रहा है.
So that would be all for this lecture. I hope you had a nice one with me and you now know fairly good amount of what do we mean by the various type of thermodynamic processes. But there is going to be a lot more coming about these processes in the upcoming lecture and you would not like to miss them. So see you again. Have a nice day. Bye bye.